Asshole.
Just like the movie Misery.
Next up on stage, Ski. Put your hands together for Ski.
Take it out.
No, put it back on. Put it back on. I'm just kidding, you're beautiful.
So this story occurred to me earlier this week, and I've gone through about 100 iterations of it. So I'm going to throw all those away, and I'm just going to kind of put a new story together here with some of the same things. This is called Greasebeard and Carl. He had a name, but the only people who ever really needed his name were people who tried to help. Church people, government people. It turned out that every time he gave his name to somebody, his real name, things went bad. So over the years, he just kind of forgotten it. He didn't have a house, didn't really have many friends. I mean, he had drinking buddies, but he didn't really have friends, and he kind of wandered the cities. By comparison, Carl had everything else. Carl had a great car, had an amazing house, had girlfriends, had money. He had a bitchin' car with the most amazing sound system that he would play as he drove around town, as loud as he possibly could get. But most of all, Carl had a name. And with that name came a reputation. That was not a very good one. There was absolutely no reason for these two people to know each other. And for years and years, that's exactly how things went. One day, Carl was doing some things that earned him his bad reputation. He was in what used to be the backyard, the back lot of a place that was no longer in business. And he was talking to somebody who had displeased him. The knife went in and out, the blood came out, and didn't go back in. And Greasebeard sat in the trash cans and watched. Not because he was particularly interested, because it was happening in front of him. Because when you're homeless, nobody sees you. You're invisible. Like he was right now. And Carl stabbed and stabbed and stabbed. And whatever screams came out didn't last long and didn't go far enough to reach anybody's ears except for Greasebeard's. So Greasebeard sat in the trash and he watched. There was only one thing that Greasebeard really owned that he liked. Someone from, which place was it? One of the helpful places that wanted his name had given him a small radio, transistor radio, that seemed to just run forever. It had a little handle he could wind up, and an earbud he could hold in one ear, like the fancy kids he saw walking back and forth. And he'd walk with this. And over the course of a long spring, a long summer, a long fall, and a long life, he found something interesting. He was crossing a bridge over 96, whatever highway it was. He didn't drive, so he didn't care so much. But as he was walking over, listening to his radio station, right in the middle of the freeway, 30 feet above all the cars rushing by, all of his music disappeared. And all he could hear was the thin, static-filled hiss of some long-distant country station. He took a few steps forward, and the country vanished, and all that was left was his jazz. It was confusing. He stepped back, and his jazz disappeared, and was replaced. Didn't know who Garth Brooks, Kenny Chesney, didn't know. Took a step forward, and once again he was back into jazz. And he didn't think much about it, because he didn't typically think about things long term. But he noticed it again when later on he found the same thing. That thin, reedy country sound coming up where all of a sudden his music vanished. And over the course of his long wanderings, he began to map it out. Over here by 3rd Street, over there by Reynolds, down by Randolph, over on University, but only in one place. And he slowly began to realize that everywhere he went in the cities, there were these rivulets, these these streams, these little etheric channels of country music. And in his mind, he pictured that there was a world above the world that he lived in, where he was homeless and he was hungry and he was cold. And instead there was a world of radio. And carved into the natural ground of the radio were these little streams, half forgotten, half dead, carved by some country music station down by Albert Lee that had somehow managed to carve little channels through the town. Well, he didn't really pay much attention to things, you know. And sometimes he talked to himself, mostly. But sometimes he did talk, and that proved to be a poor decision. Because evidently he said something, and Carl found out that he had been hiding in those trash cans that day. And well, there was no way anyone was ever going to bring Greasebeard and put him on trial. There was still that loose end that Carl disliked. And suddenly, Greasebeard found himself a wanted man. He didn't change anything. He didn't do anything that would inquire he really, really cared about his life. And he just didn't. And his invisibility extended to gangsters and wannabe gangsters too. And so even though Carl's men passed by him every day, nobody ever seemed to find him. And Carl continued to map out these little channels. And sometimes at night, with wild turkey or mad dog flowing through his veins, he could feel these channels. He would find them, these little streams, and he would immerse himself in that thin, reedy, static-filled world of country. And he could feel as if things, fish or whales, were going down the stream, lifting him up and lowering him, lifting him up and lowering him. And it was probably the alcohol or the hunger or the fleas or whatever, but he didn't get many chances for joy. And this was the most amazing thing he'd ever felt. And then it occurred to him, in that little part of his brain that still made connections with one another, if this is what his AM radio, his little radio station, his little radio would pick up, what would Carl's car do? And so Greasebeard did quite possibly the only bit of planning he had ever done in his entire life. He arranged for himself to be caught. It was, at one point, a field. It was supposed to have been a playground, but they'd never got around to fixing it. Never got around to actually breaking ground and turning it into some place for children. And Carl was there. And Greasebeard was there. Carl said some things, and Greasebeard just kind of ignored him and said, I want one thing before you kill me. I want you to can you listen to something on your radio? You have an amazing car, and there's this country station I want to listen to. Could you turn it on? I just want to hear that. I just want to hear that. Carl sneered and said, "You're not getting in my fucking car, that's for sure. But if that's what you want, yeah, sure." He parked the car, and he started searching for the bands. And Greasebeard sat there and said, a little bit more, a little bit, yeah, turn it up. And Carl's men laughed as they got their knives and their guns ready. It was a weird situation, but into everyone's life falls a little Greasebeard humor, huh? And he turned the music up and up, everyone complaining quietly about fucking country music on this car, like no one ever thought that would happen. And Greasebeard could feel it. Under the radio waves underneath him, coming through his little earbuds, but now playing out through this thumping system of Carl's amazing car was this sound, was this little watery trickle turned into a river, a torrent, and those little fish that he felt underneath him when he was drunk, the little whales that would lift him up and drop him back down, suddenly became swordfish, suddenly became gargantuans, leviathans from some deep country music station in a world that never existed. And in the car, and all around the car, something changed. And suddenly it wasn't quite as funny. One of the guys said, "Hey, did you feel something?" And Carl said, "What the fuck was that?" And Greasebeard said, Greasebeard left when the batteries in the car finally died down. Nobody stopped him, because there was nobody there. The cops came by and impounded the car a few days later. Nobody missed Carl. Nobody missed Greasebeard, but he was still there. Carl and all of his men. Some radioless world filled with fish.